أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بفضل الله، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة. And of his signs is that he created mates for you from yourselves, that you might find rest in them, and he put between you love and compassion. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على آل محمد. Firstly, I will give an introduction into our subject over the nights, which will delve into other branches as we move along. But with this introduction, just to firstly give my condolences to all the believers, that means you and those that you love and those that are around you, especially to the master of these believers, our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mehdi, on these nights being the nights of lamentation, mourning, and commemorating this tragic event. Also, I'd like to say that you do not appreciate the amount of reward that people get at these times. Because at these times when, especially being Muharram and Ashura, people start to feel the pain more because we're used to the majalis in congregation, we're used to the numbers, we're used to be around people, that your heart hurts more now. Because there's an isolation, you can't come with your whole family. Some people turn up from the family, others are left at home. And these times when you're in this somber mood, this is when your heart's broken. And this is when you cry from deep within. And this is when you supplicate that your supplication's heard. So over these nights, you need to realize that you are at this point where the world feels hopeless. especially nothing around you is encouraging. You know, if you turn on the news, all they're talking about is usually all they talk about are things that put you down. But especially now, they make it out that the world is falling apart, everybody's dying, and what have you. So you're at this point. So at this point of listening to all this, you feel down, and this is the opportunity for you to come and commemorate the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, the master when it comes to calamities and tragedies and these sorts of things. Secondly, and this is to begin our discussion, is I always like to remind people to guard themselves against evil. This is why in our Friday prayers, it's important, it's essential part of the prayer for you to enjoin others to taqwa, to guarding from evil. And it's paramount. It's so important. There's no limitation on taqwa. Allah Azza wa Jal, when He speaks of prayers, you have your subh, your dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha, then you have your mustahab salah. If you put them all together, they're 51 rakat. That's mustahab and wajib. Our fasting, if you put them together, they don't even equal a fraction of the year. Our hajj, everything has a limitation. You can't go hajj every month of the year. It's that one moment that you go. The hajj in itself, if you add it all together, it's about 5 days. If you really add up all the work that you're doing. But for taqwa, Allah Azza wa Jal does not put a limitation. There's there's nothing where you, for example, you've done your quota for taqwa. You know, if this is for your quota, I've reached the point where I've done enough. You know, we can stop now. Allah Azza wa Jal, when it comes to taqwa, He says, "Attaqullah mastata'tum." To guard from evil as much as you can. Doesn't have a limitation. Mastata'tum. So you are constantly standing to guard yourself. So this is pretty much the introduction to bring us into these nights. Our discussion will revolve about relationships, especially when it comes. We'll discuss the man and the woman for the nights as we are along, and we will branch off into subjects as we move along. So we begin first tonight by observing a part of the verse that God speaks about marriage. In this verse, when people come to ask for someone's hand in marriage, they have the speaker for the family, and the speaker will mention this verse. So when they do the nikah, the nikah, sometimes you'll find the sheikh will read this verse. And the verse is, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ. And of Allah's signs, of the signs of Allah are what? He says, أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. That Allah created from you, from yourselves, He says, أَزْوَاجًا, mates, or we say as a pair, or a couple. Then He says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, that you might find rest in them. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And Allah put between you love and compassion. We're going to begin and dissect this verse as we go over the night. From there we branch off. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Firstly, Allah begins to say that He created from us, ourselves, no one else. When we take from ourselves, you might have the misconception when people say that Eve was created from Adam's rib. You've heard this many times, you know, and this is a time to be sad, but just to brighten up the environment. Firstly, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So they tend to have a thing where they say that men have one less rib on their left side. You've heard this before. And you say, that's how you know if it's a male. Why? They say because Eve was created from Adam's rib. However, then they just realized that the majority of people have 24 ribs. Isn't that right? They got their 12 ribs on either side. So where did they come up with this? There is the anomaly. There are some people, but they're a minute percentage, and they're not necessarily male. Sometimes they can be male. Sometimes they can be a female that have. You got your real rib cage, and then you got your what they call, I don't know the exact word for it, but it's somewhere around the lines. They call them fake ribs or something like that. I know what the term is for the bottom ones because the cartilage connects them to the sternum from the bottom, as opposed to the rib cage at the top that connects to the sternum. But if you take a look at the ribs in every human being, there's 24 generally. We're talking in the majority of people. So we look at the idea, the Judeo-Christian idea, because that's where it originated from, that Eve was created from Adam's rib. And then we look at a lot of our narrations that negate that Eve was created from the same, when Allah used the earth, the tin, the clay to create Adam, what was the remainder of that clay? He created the wife. So this is what means from anfusakum, from yourselves. Also, it means like you. See, we're human beings and we marry human beings. We're not forced into humiliation. Allah doesn't say you're human, but you have to marry one of the animals or something like that. So to begin with, it's like yourself. Allah has ennobled you by letting you marry someone like yourself, not someone that's less than you, like you. And this is where we begin our first part of our discussion. We're the same. And we were all made honorable to begin with. No one should see anyone as less than them. No one should perceive anyone to be different to them. Sometimes as males and females, when men get together, they will joke about women. When women get together, they joke about men. But there's no place in Islam for misogyny, which means for people that hate women, and there's no place in Islam for misandry for people that hate men. There's no place in Islam. You have a problem. This is how, if you look at a lot of extremist causes, this is how they begin. How do extremists begin? They have one bad experience with a person, and they say, "All right, I hate the whole race." They meet someone from Alaska, for example. Because I don't think anyone's here from Alaska, so we won't have any problems. Someone turn around and say, "Did you mean me?" So then for a sudden meets this Alaskan, and he has a bad experience, and then he says, "All right, I hate all Alaskans because I had one bad experience with an Alaskan." This is what starts to happen with people, and they develop this within them. They start to hate the other gender. If you ever look at the feminazis, for example, they just hate men. They detest men. If a man speaks, they want to devour their innards. They want everything within them. They just salivate at the thought of devouring their kidneys and their liver. And then you have the other side, the male chauvinists, the ones that disregard women. They look at women as pettier and less than them, and they feel in the same manner. Oh, she's only a woman in this manner. We're talking about people that say it with malicious intent. Let's take a look at ourselves. Are we special? Do we consider ourselves to be special? One of the biggest downfalls of Banu Israel was what? They're a good example for us to look at. In Banu Israel, when Allah created them, when we say Banu, just to break it down for people to understand, Banu meaning sons. Why? Because Banin means the sons. So when we say Bani, that's why the tribe is called the sons of. And when you say that they, and that's why you get the word bin, ibn, that means son of. So Bani Israel, meaning the sons of Israel. Who was Israel? Israel was Nabi Yaqub. Jacob, who was the son of Ishaq, who was the grandson of Ibrahim, Allah Azza wa Jal named him Israel. In Hebrew, El was God. That's why you have Jibra'il, Mikael, Azrael. Here you have Israel. Okay. So Jacob was called Israel. The sons of Jacob were the 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. All the way of them is Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. They are called Bani Israel. From the 12 sons, the sons of Israel. Because they were chosen over humanity. Well, how were they chosen? Were they chosen individually? No. Allah chose Ibrahim and his sons Ishaq and Ismail, and the sons of Ishaq, Yaqub, and the son of Yaqub, Yusuf, because Allah gave him nubuwah, from man after man. You really had that son from son to son. Allah chose them and they were above all. So this gave them distinction above creation. Why? Because they were the best of creation. So the other people that were of their offspring used this in this manner. Said, we are the sons of Israel. You see it today. You see. Have you ever seen those videos when they have, especially have you ever seen those settlers, the settlers in occupied Palestine, in the kibbutzes? Have you ever watched them when they says, "This is my country, this is my land. God gave it to me. We killed Jesus and we're proud of it." I'm becoming Scottish all of a sudden. That we killed Jesus, we're proud of killing Jesus. This is what they say. Their animosity and their hatred, and they believe it's their right. Allah Azza wa Jal offers them a challenge. He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina hadu. When you pray in Salat al-Jama'ah, you read Salat. In za'amtum annakum awliya'u lillahi min dunillah. Fatamannaw al-mawta in kuntum sadiqin. You claim to be the chosen ones of God, the friends of God, the above min dunin nas. You always claim that you're God's chosen race, don't they? We're above all people. He says, فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتِ. If you honestly believe that you're God's chosen race, you should be ready for death. Why? Because you're going to heaven. And God says, فَلَنْ يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا. If you look at what happens, if Hamas scratches a few walls with a little rocket, these Katyushas, I don't know if you've ever seen, I like to give people background. You know what a Katyusha is? Just to give you an idea of what they're firing. You're talking about a country with, when you're talking about Israel, you're talking about a country with smart bombs, guided missiles. They've been given the best technology when it comes to fighter jets, helicopters, even their own tanks that they manufacture. The Magava tank is probably, I don't want to cause military sacrilege here, but it's the closest tank that you can find to the M1 Abrams, which is it's a military counterpart of this. It's one of the best tanks in the world. They've got everything. And a Katyusha, just to give you an idea, a Katyusha is pretty much two sticks that are stuck in the ground. That's what they do, or something like that. Now I'm using a bit of hyperbole here. But then they put this rocket that has no guidance whatsoever, and they launch it, and it just goes like, a balloon that, when you pop it, it starts going. So God knows where it lands. And it scratches the wall of a building. Do you know what happens? They all run downstairs and go into refuges. These God's chosen people, they're afraid of a little scratch on the wall. How can I be God's chosen race? God's chosen race. Be there. And God says, they will never want death. Why? Because they know that they're not. Are we special people in this? Let's take a look at what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says. When I look at myself, I need to think about things that can destroy me. Because one of the biggest problems, and we will learn over the discussion, and you've probably heard this many times, is a lot of the people that fall don't expect to fall. I was sitting with this gentleman, and he said to me, I'm moving overseas. I said, why? He said, to raise my children. I said, and? He said, I'm afraid my children will get lost. I said, you've moved too far ahead. He said, what do you mean? I go, I'm afraid I'll get lost. You're worried about your children. Do you think you're safe? This is how you fall off the wagon. The moment you think I'm safe, this is where you become wrong. You're not better than anyone else. Why do you think we're always told to look at ourselves, judge ourselves, worry about yourself? You even say it to your kids. If your kid does something, why did you do it? Or my brother did it. If he told you to jump off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? How many times have you heard that as a child? At school, how many times have you heard that from the teacher? Would you, if he tells you to kill yourself, would you worry about who? Yourself. Imagine you're driving, you're flying. Man's driving his car's going very fast. Police pulls him over. Says you were speeding. He says, yeah, but I was in a group of cars speeding. But you were speeding. It doesn't matter what they were doing. Your problem is who? You. So I need to worry about myself. And this is what you will find with the people that moved on the side of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Those that fought on the army for Yazid ibn Muawiyah were people who knew who Imam Hussein was. Didn't they know who he was? Of course they did. Reiterated this over and over again who he was. It was themselves. I'm special. I can't go wrong. I've got no issues. So the Prophet says in this hadith, there are three things that destroy you. Three things that are destructive. One, he says, hawan muttabi'. Or hawan muttaba', sorry, I should say. Which means a desire that is followed. Someone that follows their lusts. See those people, if they're hungry, they will eat. They don't care what they eat. Says, I'm hungry. You know, he goes into doing the drive-through at one fast food restaurant and he asks, what do you cook your food in? And they say vegetable oil, for example. And then he says, can I have a look at the gallon or whatever? And then looks, there's 99.9% vegetable oil, 0.1% animal fats. He says, well, this guy's going to punish me at 0.1%, you know, I'll have the burger. They don't look into this. They don't worry about this. If they want to go with someone for intimacy, they don't care halal, haram, as long as they do it. These types of people, they just follow their desires. They do whatever their desire tells them. They want to try something, they just try it, they don't care. The second thing, and because this is not our subject, the second thing he says, وَشُحٌ مُطَاعٌ. Shuh is when someone is a miser. Someone that's niggard. We say they're niggardly. A lot of people, when you say miserly or niggardly, they don't know what it means. You know why? Because no one uses that term anymore. They say they're tight, and I'm going to use what we're supposed to use, fisted, not the other orifice. You know, but when we talk about that someone that is tight-fisted, someone that doesn't want to give, we say this person is niggardly. When we say they're miserly, is in the sense, you know, those people when they want to give money, they grab their $5 note, they want to give it, they rub off the Queen's face because they want to make sure there's not two notes there, there's only one before they hand it over. You know, they're like that. They feel so bad about giving anything. So shuhun muta', the people that worry about they keep their money because they feel that this money will save them. That's the second destroyer. First one that follows the desire. The second one that obeys the miserliness. The third one is what? The Prophet says, إِعْجَابُ الْمَرْءِ بِنَفْسِهِ. The third destroyer is one that admires themselves. I'm awesome. As guys that look in the mirror once, they walk away and they come back. You're still there, you know? You know, I'm all that. You see, and no offense to Generation Alpha, but they're primary candidates for this, you know. They're people that can actually look at themselves all day. You know, everything's selfie. I'm doing something. I've got to take a photo that I'm there. I'm doing this. It's me. Just making sure. I'll take 70 poses, even though I'm only going to post one up on Instagram. You know, because I've got to get the right angle. And they're so good at making themselves look so awesome. That's what the job is. But this destroys you because you become infatuated with yourself. So all you worry about is who? Me. And this is what destroys our marital relationship. That's why when God begins with this verse, أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُم, from yourselves. Okay, what is self-admiration to begin with? What is it? When we look at someone that loves themselves, what is it? By definition, it's when someone is infatuated with something, okay, with themselves, something with themselves, a feature of themselves, whether or not this feature actually exists. And sometimes people may see a feature that they have, you know. For example, they think, all right, I got big biceps, I pose, and then you got these guys, got 14-inch biceps, and they think their biceps are big. So whether they have it or not, they think that they have it. To be infatuated with this is self-admiration. For example, a primary example in the Quran is Fir'aun. What did Fir'aun say? Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. He said to the people, I'm God. I'm God Almighty. That was his first pushing point with the people, that I'm your creator. Was he God? No, but he assumed he was, and he went with it. So this was the ujub within Pharaoh. Okay. What are the effects of, what are the effects of ujub that destroy a person? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamu alayh, says, al-i'jabu yamna'u al-izdiyad. Al-i'jab, to have self-admiration, prevents what? It prevents someone from any increase. Why would it do that? First, take a look. What makes a person motivated? Deficiency. If I feel deficient, then I'm motivated to become better. But if I think I'm so awesome, I think I'm above all humanity, what motivation do I have to become better? I think I'm the top, I'm the best. Why should I want to become any better than what I am? So al-i'jab yamna'u al-izdiyad. If I'm proud and I'm self-admiring, I won't want to increase in my life. And that's why sometimes, and look in our relationships in general, we have a lot of problems because some people in a relationship think, oh, I'm good. I'm so awesome. I'm so good. Sometimes when you're being too good, you're a problem because you're spoiling someone and you've made a monster yourself. It's like when someone goes, I give my child what they want. I'm always good. You destroyed your child. It's called spoiling. You have some people, when it comes to raising their children, they have a system in which they raise their children. Then you got those people, the kid says, I want sugar. Here you go, more sugar, here's some more sugar. And then the kid goes nuts and they go, what's going on? Probably having a sugar craving, and this sugar craving can turn into a sugar rage of some kind. But it's also the sugar, when you give them the sugar of spoiling. You allow the child to do what they want. There's children that have never heard the two-letter word, no. Second, the parent says no. Says, what's that? Never heard that before. Parent says yes for everything. And this is what happens with a lot of relationships and how they fall apart. So, if I'm lacking in something, then I'm motivated to improve. How can you, when you go to the hawza, someone was going to study in a seminary, one of the most important points there is what? To be enduring and accept. Could you imagine you sit down and then the person teaching you, for example, a lesson says, you have to read the Fatiha in every salah. Oh my God. Thank you, Captain Obvious. We knew that. How are you going to learn? If you can't sit there and forbear this and endure this and listen to it. In fact, how many of you cannot get up here and give a speech? Every single one of you can talk. Most people that come to centers have the ability to give a lecture. In fact, most of the stuff you hear is reminders. I'm not going to come in here and tell you a way to use make a hydrogen-powered motor vehicle. I'm not up here to teach you something you don't know. Most of the things that are mentioned in the majalis are repetitive. They're things you've heard before, and you hear them over and over again. This is the whole idea of the reminder. You're all people capable of teaching others, and you know that at work, you're the mullah there. You're the one, the Maulana, that teaches people. Because they're the ones that ask you, because you people that attend majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. So I need to be lacking for me to study. In fact, if you look at our jurists, our ulama, they're the only ulama in any religion. Take a look at our ulama. When you talk to them, they call themselves what? Talawa. They say, we are students. We're still learning. People write, for example, Ayatullah al-Uzma. People write this. But have you ever seen when they sign the letters? Have you seen what they write? They write the actual name. They actually write their name. They don't sit there and write all Ayatullah al-Uzma, al-Hajj, al-Mujahid. Let's find any other title we can throw there. No, they just write their name. Because they actually see themselves as that. If they didn't see themselves like that, they would never be in the position that they are. They would never have that position, that stability and that status where people actually know this. See, pride deprives you of attaining this knowledge. Pride deprives you of all these things. In fact, it will stop you from doing what is right. You'll have those people that, I've done enough. The Mona said about taqwa, there's no limitation on it. We take a look at what is enough. Look at what God has given you. Alam naj'al lahu aynayn wa lisanan wa shafatayn. We've given him eyes. We've given him a tongue. We've given him lips. Allah says we've given you everything. وَمَا قَدْرُ أَعْمَالِنَا فِي جَنْبِ نَعَمِكَ. As the Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam says in Dua al-Hamd. Just look at our actions compared to your blessings. You want to compare our actions and put them up against the blessings we've received from God? You'd be so ashamed. You'd put your head down. Something I remember about this actual subject. One of the sheikhs I was once listening to, he's younger than me. He's about 5 years younger than me. He was giving a speech, and he said, if we actually got our prayers, and imagine they were presented to us, like someone was doing salah for us, he said we throw them back in their face. What is this? It's that poor. Yeah, but when we put it forward, we think, all right, this is the value of them. I need to understand that if I have this regard to what my actions are, and the way that I am with regard to my actions, this is what will make me fall apart. Secondly, when we look at the majority of the people that enter the fire of hell are the mutakabbirun, proud, or the ones that admire themselves. In fact, no one enters paradise with even a speck of pride, according to the narrations, in their heart. This is the problem with this. But what makes it so difficult is within us, we all want to be that hero. Everyone wants to be the one that saves the day. Everyone wants to be the one that is known for something. But it can't be everybody for a certain thing. We all want to be that number one. But where it works for me is being number one where? On the other side. This is where I need to work. Because over there you're allowed to be proud. Here you're not allowed to be proud. Over there you are. In fact, God shows this in the Quran. When the people, أَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ, whoever's given their book in their right hand, what do they say? When they get their book in the right, they say, هَلْ أُمُقْرَأُ كِتَابِيَ. Yes, come. Read my book. How do you like them apples? They show everyone, look what I got look at my marks. They actually, I'm going to heaven. So they can be boastful then. Why? Because they've won. Right now, I don't know where I am on the other side. Yeah, I can be proud. Because I know I finished off on top. I know I'm right at the top. Even if you take a look on the day of judgment, Fatima alayhi salam will say to Allah, I want to show the people my position. Oh. But right now, I look at my acts as meager acts. That's when we finish Majalis. We say, Allahumma taqabbal minna hadha al-qaleel bi ahsani qabool. Oh Allah, accept this little that we've put forward. And in fact, Allah Azza wa Jal lets us know this. He says, خيرك, Imam Zal Abdin says, خيرك إلينا نازل وشرنا إليك صاعد. You give us banquets and we return the bones. This is what we do, don't we? You give us good, but you know what? This is the relationship we've developed with Allah. Now, Allah says, the end of Dua bi Hamza, when you reach right at the end, what it says, what does the Imam say? He says, Ya man yaqbalul yasir wa ya'fu anil kathir. Allah accepts, you know what yasir means? Little. Yasir means petty. Allah accepts what's petty. He accepts the little. وَيَعْفُ عَنِ الْكَثِيرِ. And He pardons a lot. But you have to recognize that you're petty. This is what I need to do. When the Imam, same Imam, reads into Arafah, he says, وَأَنَا بَعْدُ أَقَلُّ الْأَقَلِّينَ. I'm the least of the least. وَأَذَلُّ الْأَذَلِّينَ. I'm the lowest of the low. وَمِثْلَ الذَّرَّةِ أَوْ دُونَهَا. He says, I'm like a speck, yet I am less than a speck. This is important for me to recognize myself in this position. In fact, the fall of Iblis was pride. Illa Iblis. And Allah said, Aba wastakbar. He was proud. He was proud. His pride prevented him from obeying Allah. I should not be proud and admiring in any way of what I am, because this can be my downfall. Sometimes I do a good deed, and this good deed can destroy me completely. It can bring me right down. You know, for example, you know, when you meet someone, they give you their business card. You don't even know him from a bar of soap. You don't need to know him, but he just wants to let you know of the accolades. Now, I've seen. I don't know how it is with the with your community, but generally with where I come from, the Lebanese community. Sometimes if you don't call an engineer, al muhandis, he will remind you, I'm muhandis. Now, make sure you call me muhandis. Wow. If someone didn't call me Sheikh, I wouldn't care. I know what I am. That's their business. If someone actually uses a title, that's them being respectful. It's not what you deserve. I know what I deserve. If I don't know what I deserve, I've got issues. You think just because you went to the Hajj, you know, some people go to the Hajj and they use it as a means of validating a transaction. You know, have you noticed that? That I'm a Hajj. By the Kaaba that I saw, I'm selling you a good product. They'll use it as a means of a transaction. You know what I mean? To say that because of my Hajj, it becomes trustworthy. As if God owes him something for this. As if God owes me something. As if God is, you know, AB negative blood type and he's a liver waiting for, he's a liver transplant recipient and I'm the one that's turned up with that right liver and I just saved his life. This is how people deal when it comes. Nothing that you've brought forward is needy of Allah. You're the one that is in need. That's why you come to these congregations. The one sin that I commit that makes me feel redundant, makes me feel that I need to turn back to God is better. This is a hadith on Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, سيئة تسوءك خير عند الله من حسنة تعجبك. A sin that makes you feel down and makes you, you know, feel that bad about yourself is better than a good deed that makes you proud. You believe that? A sin that makes you feel bad is better than a good deed that makes you proud. In fact, there's a hadith just to go with this that one man from Banu Israel worshipped Allah for 40 years. And then when he asked about his actions, the Prophet at his time told him that you have been rejected. Your 40 years of worship has not been accepted. So then he reproached himself. He said, I should turn back to God and ask Allah for forgiveness. You know what the Prophet then came back to him and said to him? That you reproaching yourself, you talking back to yourself, is more value to Allah than your 40 years of work. This is what you're here for, attending these majalis. Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in Mecca. I do apologize firstly because I had a bit of an introduction that we've went on for a bit. So just bear with me just tonight, inshallah. Tomorrow night I will try and stay within the times. I know you probably, some of you are tired, but bear with me. It's Laylatul Jummah. Inshallah, Allah accepts your actions. On this night, it's Laylatul Jummah, the night of dua, turning to Allah. Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in Iraq, in Mecca, on the day of Tarwiyah, which is the day where the Muslims usually go to Mina. And they get the water to bring it for Arafah, because there's no, they go get the water, to bring to Mina. They take water to Mina before they go to Arafah. Back then when there was no water available in Mina at that time. So at this time, the Imam is performing the Hajj and there is a plot upon him to be killed. That he's going to be killed. So he converts the Hajj that he's performing, being Hajj al-Akbar. Hajj al-Akbar meaning what? The full Hajj. We do Hajj Umrah Tamattu and Hajj al-Tamattu. He converts that to a Hajj al-Asghar, into just a Umrah Mufrada, because he has to flee from those that intend on killing him. In this moment, he gives his famous sermon. For those people that don't believe in fate, those people that don't believe that it does dictate your life, he explains what is going to happen. And in every sermon, the Imam Salamullah alayhi speaks between the people. At the beginning of this sermon, he begins in the name of Allah. He glorifies Allah. He gives his salutations to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he begins being subordinate and grateful to Allah Azza wa Jal, not someone that is admiring of who they are. He says, Alhamdulillah wa ma sha Allah wa la quwwata illa billah wa sallallahu ala rasulihi wa alihi wa sallam. Praise be to Allah. By Allah's will there is no power but with Allah, and the blessings of Allah be upon his messenger. Then he says to the people, he's recognizing the inevitability of death, and preparing for it. He says, خُطَّ الْمَوْتُ عَلَى وُلْدِ آدَمَ مَخَطَّ الْقِلَادَةِ عَلَى جِيدِ الْفَتَاةِ. That he says, verily death is bound on the sons of Adam. It's bound upon us. We're all meant to die. He says, as the necklace is around the neck of the maiden. Has a beginning right to the end. Eventually, we all have a time where we finish. In other words, he's reminding these people that we're all going to die. It's how you die. It's where your stance is when you die. Where are you when your time comes? Explaining to them what is about to happen, what is coming to them. That the righteous one is comfortable with their own death. They are ready to die. And then he says to them, وَمَا أَوْلَهَنِي إِلَىٰ أَسْلَافِ اشْتِيَاقَ يَعْقُوبَ إِلَىٰ يُوسُف. He says, how I desire to meet my ancestors, the ones before me. Who's he talking about? He's talking about Rasulullah. He's talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima al-Zahra, al-Hasan alayhim salam, his uncle Hamza and his brother and his uncle Ja'far. He wants to go back and see them. He longs to them. How? He says the longing of Ya'qub to Yusuf. Can you imagine that? This is how much I long for them. Because a righteous person, as I mentioned before, Banu Israel, لا يتمنوا الموت. They do not desire, they do not want it. But a righteous person wants to go back to the righteous. Because he knows where they return to. They return to Allah Azza wa Jal. They return to Rasulullah. When they return to Rasulullah, they are entering towards the Prophet of mercy, the paradise. So they long for this. The ones that haven't done right don't long for this. So he says, I long to return to my ancestors. And then he says to them about the fact that he will be martyred in this way. And he says, because of this, he says, نَصْبِرُ عَلَى بَلَائِهِ وَيُوَفِّينَ أُجُورَ الصَّابِرِينَ. That we are patient over the tribulations and the trials we are given to God. Allah will give the reward for the forbearing ones. So his brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya comes up to him and says, Aba Abdullah. He says, why is it that you are going in this direction? He says, you're going towards Kufa. Don't you remember the people of Kufa? Don't you remember the way they treated our father, Amir al-Mu'mineen? Don't you remember the Kufans and the way that they treated our brother, Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam? Don't you remember the way these people treated us? So we advised him to go to Yemen. And then he told him to consider this, go to Yemen and go in this direction. So then the Imam, at first when he tells him, he says to him, I will consider this. Upon returning, the Imam says to him, no, I'm heading towards Iraq. So then Muhammad al-Hanafi asks him, he says, Aba Abdullah, why the change? Why are you heading to Iraq? And he says, Sha Allah an yarani qatila. That Allah wishes or wills that for me, that He wishes to see me what? Killed. And then he says, okay, Abu Abdullah, you're going on your own. Why is it that you're taking your family with you? He says to him, Sha Allah an yarahinna sabaya. That Allah wishes to see them captive. This is what Allah has asked for. And this is what Allah wills. This is in this result in this direction. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam leaves Mecca towards Kufa, towards Karbala. He moves in that direction, and the people that have gathered and went with him, of them are his family, and of them are his companions, and many that left him, that didn't remain with this. Inshallah, over these nights, attempt to even shed one tear over Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If you don't shed it during the Nohas, you don't shed it during the Ziyarah, even in any way, even if you have to, remember a tragedy that's happened to you. Because a single tear that you drop that goes over your cheek, this is Imam Rada alayhi salam, that goes over your cheek, he says, Allah will forgive your sins. Ma taqaddam wa ma ta'akhar, what you have committed and what is to come. And then he says, whether it's saghiruha wa kabiruha, whether it's small or it's big. Then he says, qalila aw kanat aw kathira. If it's small in quantity or if it's great in quantity. So not only the amount of sin, as in, doesn't matter how large your sin is and how many times you've done it. This is a time for you to reflect. Laylatul Jum'ah, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal on this night that firstly, anyone that has passed away from this congregation or their relatives, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to dress them in the garb of mercy, to place them with whom they love, Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhim as-salatu was-salam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal if there are any sick people from this congregation or those that they love or of the believers, we ask Allah to give them shifa, a cure from their illness, and to give them rest from their illness and respite from their illness. Ask Allah Azza wa Jal to remove this shroud that's above us right now with this virus. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal if anyone is present here, this is the first night, Laylatul Jum'ah. You are people that are listening to Majlis Abu Abdullah, whether you are present here or whether you're at home, you are listening. So you are congregating because you're bound by the laws that exist and you're still in attendance on Laylatul Jum'ah. When the prayers are answered, we ask Allah if anyone has a haja. Whatever you need is, we ask Allah to fulfill this need. Most importantly, ask for the reappearance of our master, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا دليلا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى 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 ورحمة الله وبركاته وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح موتانا وموتاكم نهدي لهم ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.